and welcome once more to the Open Door Show from Property CEO. My name is Ritchie and it's great to have you here. As always, over the next 30 minutes, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the world of small-scale property development. And as always, talking to some important people out there, maybe people that you're not used to talking to or you're used to hearing from, movers and shakers out there, people in the industry who can give us the inside track on what's happening in the world of property. Above all, and most importantly, we can have a bit of fun, because I always say life is far too short not to. So what's coming up on today's show? Well, I've got a great guest on today, and a guest that I think is going to open your eyes on a subject that a lot of you won't be familiar with. Okay, I'm talking about landscape architecture. Now you're probably thinking, Clapson, what are you talking about? Architecture, landscape, what is it? I'm talking about gardens. I'm talking about the external spaces. And we have specialist landscape architects in the industry that sometimes we absolutely require because it's part of the planning process. Sometimes we actually just could do with using to enhance the value. They are a really important part of the team, and often an underutilized member of the team, or often forgotten member of the team. So on today's show, I've got Hilary Newhall. Okay, Hilary is a chartered member of the Landscape Institute. She's well qualified in the industry. She's been around 30 years. Okay, she's also a specialist garden design tutor. So she actually teaches people. You're not going to get any better than this. Hilary's company is called All Change Consulting Limited, and she offers very bespoke landscape architectural services for a range of clients and especially developers, which is why I've got her onto the show today. So Hilary, welcome to today's show. Good morning, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Hi, nice to see you.
Good to have you on. Now, Hilary and I first met two or so years ago. We met at a property networking event and sort of kept in touch. And I said to Hilary a while ago, one of my team reached out and said, let's get you on Open Door because I don't think we talk enough about landscape architecture. Hilary, tell me first of all, what's your business? What do you really offer? What do you do?
That's a nice wide question. I like to do pretty much everything involved with landscape architecture. I like to do lots of different projects. I don't focus on one particular project. So anything from a tiny courtyard up to character assessment of a county or wider area.
Brilliant, brilliant. So I love the fact that you go from a small courtyard and we can see benefit in that as a developer right the way up. Just tell me then, in terms of when might we need a landscape architecture? When do we, an architect, when do we need to bring them into a project?
I think if I take the idea of need, then quite often the developer will find that they need somebody to discharge landscape planning conditions. And that's the first time that it occurs to them that they might need a landscape architect. Especially when quite often the landscape conditions will say that the building can't be occupied until they have the planning authority have a plan in place and an approved plan for the landscape. So it can be quite important in terms of getting the project paid for.
So we're talking about something. So when we get a planning approval as a developer, there might be a condition in there, Hilary, that says you've got to put forward a landscape plan of how we're going to landscape the external spaces. That's got to be approved. And until that's approved and put in place, you can't actually occupy the building.
That's right. Yes, I've had quite a few developers suddenly realizing that they need this and they haven't got it and they don't know anybody that can do it, and shouting out on LinkedIn for anybody that can help them.
And I bet you get that call on a Friday afternoon normally, don't you?
I have had it on a Friday afternoon, and I have had the drawings finished for the Monday morning.
Wow.
So,
well, at least...
But don't ask me.
You don't want that too much, do you? You don't want that too much.
No. I prefer a sort of reasonably slowish approach rather than I need something by Monday.
Let's just go back to it then, because there's often a term, hard landscaping, soft landscaping. But first of all, what is landscape architecture? And then could you break that down into hard and soft? Because a lot of people will think, Hilary, that this is just an architect. But obviously, you're not an architect. You're a landscape
I'm
architect.
not an architect, no. If you think about architects that design buildings, and landscape architects can be involved with anything that isn't a building, although we do very small garden buildings on occasion. So yeah, anything that isn't a building really. Typically a small development of a few houses to something larger for example, a solar farm, or around a larger development of houses, or sort of redesign from office building to
To residential, we're talking about, yeah?
Yes, that's the one. Thank you.
No worries.
Sorry.
So if we're taking an office building, converting it to residential, we're going to have some external space around that building, which is often very commercialized bit of a car park. And even if we don't have it as part of a planning condition, which indeed we might have to discharge, we might still want to actually make that much more residential. That's where you would come in to look at that. Is that right?
I can certainly do that. Yeah, there's two particular aspects. One is I'm very good at finding extra car parking spaces by redesigning car parks, which can be quite useful. Wow. And also, especially in terms of new residential properties, we can look at enhancing the way that people see that property when they first walk in, to make it far more inviting than it might do if it's just a plain old office building that's been converted. We can use planting. We can use planting. We can use new paving, for example, all sorts of different things, railings. So coming back to your question about what's the difference between hard and soft landscaping. Hard landscaping is paving, it's walls, it's railings, it's hard, basically.
Yeah. Anything which is a solid material as such, not living.
Yeah, and outside. And soft is the planting. And as somebody who started their life as a gardener on the Parks Department many moons ago.
Yes.
It is something that I'm very familiar with. Show me a garden and I can probably tell you at least 90% of the names of the plants, but it will be in scientific speak rather than necessarily common names.
Wow. Well, I tell you what, I haven't got a clue when it comes to gardening. We're back at my house. If I went around my house, part of the fact I'm colorblind, and sometimes my wife goes, "Oh, that's dead." I go, "It doesn't look dead to me." She said, "Well, it's all brown. It doesn't look any different to me." I haven't got a clue. Plant's a plant. I sometimes will dig it in because she asked me to dig it in, and I'll dig it out when it's dead, and that's it. That's about as far as I get involved. Occasionally, she asks me to help prune something, and I get that all wrong. So keep me out of the garden. Do you have a passion for this, for plants and stuff, Hilary? You've been around them so long.
Yes, I do. In the sort of free time that I have, I tend to spend it either sneaking around garden centres, having a good look at what's available, although it's often brought on slightly earlier than the real time that it would be flowering, for example. But it's useful to see what the garden centres do with the different plants. We have a brilliant garden centre locally, and they put together all sorts of wonderful displays. So it's nice to look at that. And I also go to gardens. I was down in Worcestershire, I think, last year, and just looked on the map and said, we're near Hidcote. We've got to go to Hidcote, which is a National Trust garden. So we went there for the first time, and that's what I do. I read, I look on the internet. My Pinterest pages are expanding rapidly.
All about plants. Going back to something you mentioned, which is interesting, a lot of people won't think of this, is the car parking. Now, car parking for us as developers is absolutely paramount. We're sometimes trying to squeeze in an extra space, either because we need it for planning or we feel we want it for our demographics, for our customers. That's a really interesting point. How do you manage to sort of, is it just the understanding of car parking and turning circles, or is it just that creative mind that you've got that can get these extra spaces?
I think it's partly the creative side of things. It's sort of thinking outside the box, what box? And often by just tweaking something here or there, you can find that extra space, or by changing the way that the car parking is set out, you can find an extra space. Yeah, it can be quite useful to look over something that's needing an extra space or two. And there's no guarantee that I'd be able to find one, but I could certainly have a go.
I love that fact where you say thinking out the box. What box? Whoever said there was a box that we had to think out of? I love that phrase. Going back then to the landscaping, Hilary. Obviously, yes, we talked about that commercial building. You could do some hard landscaping, soft landscaping. I guess what that does, it just softens that previous commercial aspect of that building and just transforms that into a much more residential feel. So that the landscape is all about softening that visual appearance of the building, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be. I think of it in terms of, if somebody was building something from scratch, then the landscape could be part of that automatically. And what we're doing with something that's been converted from an office building to residential is to make it have that sort of appearance, as though it's been built for residential use. So things that you might find in an industrial building, an office building, a car park, around the edges, I would be looking at doing something different there. And I'd be looking at doing something particularly at the front entrance, or anything that's facing the road, for example, because all of that area can make a huge difference to the way that people look at a building, whether it's an office or whether it's a home.
Yeah. Interesting. And in terms of selection of plants, I guess that is absolutely, I mean, I say I don't have a clue about plants, and I make no bones about that, but it's about choosing that right plant, because I guess as a general member of the public, we go to a garden centre and you buy a little plant and it's about this big. You're choosing plants that presumably are established or that can withstand those locations, that make that immediate visual impact that we need to sell those buildings.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, that's one approach. Is to make that immediate impact for selling flats or whatever. The other way of looking at it is when it's for a planning condition, for example, I will often ask my clients whether it's for that purpose of selling the property, or whether it's to discharge planning conditions, in which case we might design it as cheap as chips, so to speak. So rather than putting in a semi-mature tree, for example, putting in a smaller tree, which you know will actually catch up over time anyway. So you won't get that instant impact, but you will get the tick in the box from the planning authority, if they understand the process that you're going through. And also in terms of cost, there are certain plants that are far more expensive than others. So again, we would choose those carefully depending on the situation.
I like the fact there, that commerciality, Hilary, that you are someone that will work with developers, understand that motive. And as you say, if I was a developer and said, I'd be honest, Hilary, I can sell these no problem at all, I just need to discharge the planning condition, we could think of a scheme that's commercially viable for that. Interesting.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
in terms of, I certainly, I know a few developers who've got caught out. One that I know reasonably well, student of ours that we trained, didn't fully understand the landscaping costs that were required in the scheme, and the hard landscaping, and there was some like retaining walls, not major structural ones, but little sort of, sleeper walls, that sort of thing. Sometimes a lot of people underestimate the cost. Is that something that you can help guide working with the professional team to put that scheme together at an early stage, if it's part of planning, so actually developers, we understand those costs?
I can do that, yes. I have to say that I haven't ever been asked to do that, but it's certainly something I could do. Yeah.
Brilliant, useful. There's a term, I just wanted to pick up on this one today: master plan, landscape architect master plan. What is that? Because some people might hear that term, and someone asked me the other day, they said, what's a master plan? So Hilary, from your point of view, what's a master plan in landscape architecture?
Okay. For me, a master plan is something that will give you an idea of what you're going to get, but it doesn't give you the detail. So it might say paving of this type in these sort of areas. So not specifically saying we have this here, but saying in communal areas we'll have this paving, in entrance areas we'll have this type of paving, walls will be will match the existing building, for example, or the building that is being built, that sort of thing. And also you can do the same with planting. You can say this is the style of planting that we're looking at. And often with a master plan, marking off areas but not really very specific is helpful, but also a lot of visual clues. So to say this type of material for this, and 2 or 3 photographs of. Same with planting. Do we want native planting? Do we want naturalistic planting, which is something else again? Or do we want park style planting? Do we want very domestic style planting? And again, the visual clues, the sort of photographs and things, will really help to bring that home to people. And it helps to focus ideas of what's possible, really.
So we've got that master plan that now bringing you in at the right time will also enable us then to do those detailed layout plans, which are going to be detailed enough for the contractor to actually tender and put that together.
That's
and presumably
right.
then the main contractor would need a specialist landscape contractor to put those in.
Absolutely, yes. Sometimes the client will get the builder to do that, and then the builder gets completely muddled up when it comes to the plants, particularly. They can do the hard landscaping, that's not too bad, but when it comes to getting the plants in, sourcing the plants from a decent nursery, and then actually planting them, it's far better to get a landscaping contractor to do that.
And can you help us as developers design that process, but also manage that process right the way through to delivery, so actually it matches the scheme that you designed?
That is the best possible solution from a personal and professional point of view, to be able to check that what has gone on the plan and what's been promised to the landscape or the planning authority, is actually what goes in on the ground, because quite often I've seen this happen, that the landscape contractors have substituted a huge number of plants, and then the landscape architect or landscape and tree officer comes along from the council and says, all of those are the wrong thing. What's happening? So if I can come in and manage the project and make sure that what was on the plan is actually what's going on the ground, often before it actually goes in the ground, I can ask to look at the planting, for example, in a nursery before it actually goes to site. I can look at it when it arrives on site. So it's not just about what's arriving, it's also about the quality, because I go to a lot of trouble to specify exactly what quality of planting I'm expecting. And if there's no one to check it, then there's no point really in doing all of that work.
No, I get your point. The contractor could very easily source a plant which has got the right name, but they're cheap and cheerful, and the quality of them is no good, and the garden centre's flogging them off cheap, and that's not what we're actually paying for. Interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, it's also not what the local authority, if it's for discharging landscape conditions, it's not what the local authority is expecting. The same can happen with materials. You know, you can specify X bricks, for example, from this manufacturer, or similar approved is something that we often put on drawings, but who's going to approve it? Is it going to be the clerk of works, if there's a clerk of works on site, for example, or is it going to go back to the landscape architect and let the landscape architect decide whether it's a suitable material or not?
Mm. Can I ask a question in terms of, we started the show today and we talked about even basic courtyards we could do some work with. What's your thoughts in terms of, if we've got a lot of developers and wannabe developers listening to this, and they might never have thought about landscape architecture. In my opinion, a good landscape architecture will add so much more value to that development and sellability. It's always worth, even in the smallest of courtyards, having some input. Do you agree with that?
Well, of course, I agree with that.
I want you to agree with that on an unbiased basis, the fact that you're a landscape architect.
Yeah, difficult one. No, it can add value to a scheme when, even for a small scheme, even for a small courtyard, to create something that's it can create a whole new feeling in that space. Instead of it being a small space that looks crowded, it can actually remind people of small spaces that they've enjoyed being in previously, even if they've not realized that they've enjoyed it. You know, that sort of brings back those feelings of, for example, a small courtyard abroad. So you might do something that's got a real Italian feel to it, without the Doric columns and things.
I like it. I think the thing I'd often say, and my experience has been this in the past, that a good landscape architect will often save you their fee or make their fee up in the sellability or the enhanced value of the end product. And so I think that's a good way of looking at it. Any thoughts on that? I'm not asking you to guarantee that, but...
No, thank you. Yes, I think it's certainly possible. I wouldn't like to put a figure on it. Yeah, we come cheap. In the grand scheme of things, you know, the fees for landscape architecture projects is pretty minimal in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, worth considering.
And the cost of the landscape in terms of the cost of the rest of the project is fairly minimal too, generally. But it can make a huge difference to the sellability of the whole project. Yeah,
the sellability. Yeah. So, but on that theme, when should a developer bring someone like yourself in, Hilary, to a project? Right at the onset, right at the beginning concept stage?
It can certainly work better that way. I've worked on projects where we've talked to the architect talked with the architect right from the start, and they've been this particular one that I'm thinking of. They were looking at building 6 houses in the grounds of a Grade 1 listed building, and the local authority, quite right, they were saying, well, this it doesn't fit in with the landscape.
Yeah.
And I found information about courtyards in similar properties in the area, and the architect changed the layout because of this information that I'd found out about the courtyard shape, and it was accepted along with a thing called a landscape and visual impact assessment, which we did. It was accepted by the local authority as a reasonable way to develop those 6 houses.
Wow. So bring you right in at early stage. I love it. Hilary, that's been great. Brilliant. Mm-hmm. If people want to reach out and contact you, what's the best contact details, Hilary, for you and your company?
Okay. The easiest one is probably my email address, which is Hilary with 1 L.
Yep.
So HILARY at allchangeconsulting.co.uk.
And what's your website details, just in case people want that?
Website is pretty much the same. So www.allchangeconsulting.co.uk. I would rather receive texts at first than a phone call. But my phone number is 0795 572 8562. So
just say that phone number again for me, Hilary, so people have got that.
Yeah, it's 0795 572 8562.
And as Hilary says, drop her a text in the first instance, a text or an email, and then she can pick up and respond. And hopefully people can reach out to you. And Hilary, what we'll do, we'll put all your contact details in the show notes so people have got those. And you're happy for people to reach out, have an initial chat, understand a little bit more about landscape architects and whether you're the sort of person that can help them out on their project. So that'd be okay.
Absolutely, yeah. I may not be the right person for them, but if I'm not the right person, I will tell them, and I will put them in touch with somebody who can help them.
Brilliant. That's good. I like a nice, honest opinion there. That's good. So if Hilary doesn't want to work with you, she's going to tell you that. Okay, that's what she's going to tell you. Hilary, look, great. Thanks for coming in today's show. I'm sure people found that useful, so I appreciate that. We're going to put all your details in your show notes. Hilary, thank you very much.
All right. Thanks very much. Cheers. It's been great to be here.
Good stuff. Wow, wasn't that good? I mean, that was great, wasn't it? I mean, all about landscape architecture, which you might not have heard about, you might not have known about out there. But please reach out to Hilary. We're going to put her details, allchangeconsulting.co.uk. We're going to put her details in the show notes before. Reach out to her. She said text or an email, and then she can tell you a little bit more about what she does. But actually, if this can change your scheme, it can change the saleability or even enhance the value. It's something you should be looking at. If you're interested again in the property development and you want a bit more information, grab a pen and paper, write this link down, propertyceo.co.uk/SFR. That's propertyceo.co.uk/SFR. That stands for 6-figure roadmap. It's a bit of free training. It's about an hour and a half I put together, which will introduce you to the world of property development. Hopefully you've enjoyed today's show, and I look forward to seeing you on the next edition of Open Door. Goodbye for now.